Good morning, everyone. Bonjour et bienvenue. Shalom. My name is Annette Wildgoose. I am a member of the National Holocaust Monument Committee, and I will be your MC for Yom HaShoah today. Je vous remercie de votre présence ce matin. It is my pleasure to invite Elder Fred McGregor, member of the Algonquin Anishinaabe from the Kitigan, Zibi, Anishinaabe First Nation, to offer blessings. Thank you, miigwech.
I would just like to say good morning, everybody, for everyone that has gathered here, for our elders, our Jewish elders and all elders from across the country, and especially our youth here today. For every one of you, this is an important time, but it's also an important, challenging time. And we see what's happening around this world. It's a real challenge. And we take time to look as to what's happened, and we must know history. History of everybody is important, and we know why we're here. And there's two letters that you know what these stand for. There's a letter R and there's a letter G. You don't have to explain anymore because as students, and we all know what those mean, and we see what happens. Of the most dangerous beings is in the story of creation is, as human beings, it's us, and we see what we perpetrate against each other, and it's kind of sad. But to see something that's systematic and that's done for that amount of numbers, it's hard to comprehend. I'm going to do an indigenous opening. It's going to be done in the original language. I'm going to get everybody to stand. I know it's cold, but you got to move around a little bit. So we're here. For our elders here, you don't have to. But it's a free time in the sense that if you can't, that's fine. Jem ne don we go tang chimi gwech on jenongo. We go tang chimi gwech kakana kinga jichige. We go tang chimi no waj ningi ne se. Kakana go ningi ne se ben on magach. We go tang chimi gwech. Kan chige go kai tes no kingi ken don kai tek. We go tang chimi gwech kinga ton on magach. Kingi ken don. Chimi gwech on jonang shak to be keys. Kakana go kinga ton on magach king. Kakanago Jay Gishin Kadek Madzuin. Nueren Chimi Gwetch. Chimi Getch on Jini B, CB Saiganan. Aki Kakanago Jay Madzuin. Garnisho Gadejik, Neo Gadejik, Masujik, Madgejik, Mish, Ki Mashkikin, Mitigog, Kakanago Nueren, which tongue Jimmy Gwetch. Jimmy Gwetch on Jay Dewe, Ganesh J. Pog, Ganesh Kanamagozuin. Kan also damwaj. En abigis nigi kend on king guys it again. Jimmy guys gigi no up in the snane go shmagut. Mom we no reach me madzi on go shmagut ne get sim nanik. Me shom sanana go kum snanik. We go to me gwetch. Kai misha on go shmagut. Kan no join miswak. Kwe wak shit jabanon jishak. Kanabok. As his Kaishin cause was on Shmoy, $1,000 cause was a make the cognac. As in cause was Shuda Quail in the work. $1,000 cause, but Neben August, Gino John Miswak, Guinea Guinea Sawa. We got tongues to me, Retski and Argy, Cano John Miswak, a Kanabok. Kakuzic. We got to me, Retski and Argno, my Gabno Jishak Quayok. Kanabo, in Gajin Kadik, residential command non, she's Kanabo, National Big Quay, she's Jabano Gishak, she's Quayog, and Chima Garden Arning. Chimugashki Nagajik. She's got the Nizwak baby, second come she can't see the Nisiwak. Jabui, Mino, she Margaret, get Chiakuzu. Nui, the good tongue, Chimugach on Janongum. Chimugach, Gazin jig. You can all have a seat. I gave thanks for the 4 directions, but also the last one is we all wash our hands together. We know we get through the large sickness. And one of the things here is we will have at the end at 11 o'clock, as I understand, is a moment of silence, and it's very important. This is for everybody, but it's a very particular nation as well. There's a word that says never again, but it's unfortunate because it continues to happen. But for every student that's here, for the student groups that are here, it's important to know the history, your own history, and histories of others. Because we only share one earth. And here in Mikanok-Minitig, Turtle Island, many have come to visit. Many run from places or seek shelter and sanctuary. The Anishinaabe understanding is that this was always something that was to be shared. And when things happen, we try to help or provide that as well. But sometimes it does not go both ways. When we look around as to what happened to one particular nation that is a non-violent, that is very sad. But we will remember those, and for all other nations as well, and especially the women and children. They suffer the most, and in this nation here, that's why we're here today. This is one of the things I was told by one of the late Elder William Commanda. He says about the Jewish nation, he says they're continually mourning to lose that many. And any nation that loses that many people or close to that many, there is a long period of mourning. So we remember those. So as students, I thank you for being here. And remember that and know the history, because when you go to those institutions, you remind those institutions of your history and the history of others. And don't be shy. When you hear the word, when you hear that R word, and when you see what the G word is happening, to speak out against it. This is what education teaches us. And this is what we come to learn. So take it to heart, and don't forget your own history and everybody else's history. And it's nice to see everyone, because I've seen you at some of these gatherings. So I was going to say, Tong Shimigwech, and for all you students out there, I'm very proud of you. And you have a legacy of your elders to look after what we have. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Elder McGregor, thank you for your inspiring words and for your blessings. The National Holocaust Monument is essential in hosting Yom HaShoah, as it serves as a focal point for all Canadians from coast to coast to coast via our live stream to participate in this solemn day of remembrance, and serves as a necessary and important tribute to those who suffered and perished during the Holocaust. Le monument offre un espace pour honorer et se souvenir des millions de vies innocentes perdues au cours de cette période sombre de l'histoire. Cependant, il sert également de symbole de l'espoir et de résilience. J'aimerais remercier nos invités spéciaux et nos conférenciers, ainsi que la communauté diplomatique. As well, I would like to thank elected officials, leaders of the interfaith community, and the general public who are amongst us this morning. Cette année, nous avons invité les élèves de Ottawa à venir apprendre et à participer à la commémoration. Nous sommes très reconnaissants envers les écoles suivantes, si bien dirigées par leurs enseignants qui sont avec nous aujourd'hui. Colonel By Secondary School, Nepean High School, Sir Robert Borden High School, Lester B. Pearson High School, Notre Dame High School, Torah Day School of Ottawa, and the Ottawa Jewish Community School, a total of over 200 students. Yes, please. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Last, but by no means least, are our Holocaust survivors. These individuals have contributed relentlessly over the years to Holocaust education in Ottawa schools through presentations, Holocaust research, and first-hand witness documentaries. I wonder if I may ask you, if you can, and if you can't, to raise your hand, but if you could stand up so that we could recognize you. Ellie Bollegraf, the Netherlands, my friend. Vera Gara, Hungary. Flora Love Katz, who is here. Unfortunately, Ruth, her mum, was not able to be with us this morning. Thank you, Flora Love. Cathy Morrison, Hungary. And we are deeply honored to have Cantor Kraus, who was born in Czechoslovakia. Cantor Kraus is well known in the Ottawa community, 102 years old. Quite remarkable. We're indebted to you, and thank you for being with us this morning. I would like to invite our speaker, our next speaker, Andrea Friedman, who's the chair of the Ottawa Jewish Federation, to offer opening remarks. Andrea, please.
Aujourd'hui est un rappel solennel du chapitre le plus sombre de l'histoire humaine, alors que nous engageons à ne jamais oublier les souffrances et les atrocités inimaginables infligées au peuple juif et à d'autres groupes marginalisés. On this day, we remember the victims, the survivors, and the heroes who resisted and fought against the brutality of the Nazis. We pay tribute to their resilience, courage, and spirit in the face of unthinkable adversity. Tomorrow is the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, symbolizing a refusal to succumb to Nazi atrocities. Resistance fighters took action, first by smuggling in weapons, ammunition, supplies, and preparing for battle. Then they launched a surprise attack against the Nazis, fighting with unbelievable bravery and determination. Ils se sont battus comme seuls les désespérés peuvent le faire, et malgré les obstacles écrasants, ils ont tenu pendant près d'1 mois complet. Simcha Rotem, or Kazakh, as he was known at the time, was a teenage fighter, serving as a liaison between different resistance groups, and participated in fierce battles against the well-armed Nazi forces. After the uprising, he was one of the very few who managed to escape from the ghetto through the sewers and continue to fight as a partisan in the Polish forests. He survived the war and later made Aliyah, where he played an active role in Holocaust remembrance and education, passing away at the age of 94. Resistance in the Holocaust came in many forms. Anyone who managed to help their fellow Jew by sharing their measly food rations on a day when somebody needed it even more than they did, picking up the slack for someone who couldn't meet their daily backbreaking and soul-crushing labor quotas, created art during this horrific time, sabotaged production, or managed to keep their faith and humanity. They were all resistors, and their legacy will never be forgotten and continues to inspire. Their heroism is a challenge for all to redouble efforts to combat anti-Semitism, which has increasingly become normalized in Ottawa and in Canada and must be pushed back to the fringes of society. Never again is an empty slogan when anti-Semitism is allowed to flourish, when it finds fertile ground in a country as great as ours. Let the inspiration of fighters and survivors like Rotem and the incredible survivors with us here today spur us all to battle even harder against anti-Semitism. For all of us who love Canada, for all of us who value all of humanity, there simply is no other choice.
Merci Andrea et pour le soutien de la Fédération. J'ai maintenant le grand privilège d'inviter le Premier ministre du Canada, le très honorable Monsieur Justin Trudeau, au podium. Monsieur Trudeau.
Bonjour. Merci, Annette. I want to begin by recognizing the survivors. Thank you for being here on what is always a cold day in this monument. I think I was saying to Andrea, I think it's designed to make sure that we're always slightly uncomfortable in this moment when we gather here, because the things we discuss should make us uncomfortable. We should be here and reflect on the extraordinary discomfort so many people experienced before. Cantor, what a pleasure to see you again. We last saw each other before COVID, and it's so happy to see you here well again, as someone who's been extraordinary all your life, and I can't help but think of my father and the friendship you had with him when I see you as well. So it's so good to have you here. Merci, Amy McGregor, Fred. Thank you for sharing your words with us here today and reminding us of the difficulty of racism with a capital R and genocide with a capital G, and how we need to carry a responsibility to never forget and move forward every day with openness and compassion, but also un devoir de mémoire, as we say in French. Andrea, thank you for your words. Je suis très content d'être ici aussi avec plusieurs ministres, les ministres Rodriguez, Gould, Blair, Boissonneau, Hussein, Lametti, Anand et Bennett, ainsi que les membres de notre caucus, Anthony, Anita, Rachel, Yara, Yasser et Francesco, qui se joignent à nous aujourd'hui pour se souvenir des atrocités de l'Holocauste et des 6 millions de Juifs qui ont été assassinés. Mayor Sutcliffe, Mark, always good to see you here as well. We have many leaders from across government, including the government leader in the Senate, and the deputy leader of the opposition, and leaders within and across the Jewish community. Ambassador Hoffman, always a pleasure to see you here. Always bittersweet to see you still here, but wishing you all the best as you move forward. Ambassador Jelski from Poland, thank you for being here as well. There you are. It's an honor to have you both here as well as so many members of the diplomatic corps. Importantly, I really want to acknowledge the young people who are here today, students from high schools across the National Capital Region. You have the extraordinary privilege of learning history here today while sitting alongside those who witnessed and survived the Holocaust. Parmi les 40 000 survivants de l'Holocauste qui sont venus au Canada, environ 10 000 sont encore avec nous. Écouter leurs expériences nous permet de comprendre que l'histoire, que l'Holocauste, n'est pas seulement un sujet abordé dans des livres ou des films. C'est une réalité terrifiante qui a été vécue par des millions de personnes. C'est une réalité qui a mené à l'assassinat de 6 millions de Juifs, de jeunes enfants, des adultes, des aînés. Ils ont été assassinés parce que les gens ont choisi la haine. Mais durant cette même période, de nombreuses autres personnes ont choisi l'espoir. C'était notamment le cas des femmes et des hommes de courage qui ont pris part au soulèvement du ghetto de Varsovie. In Warsaw, 450,000 Jews were forced to live in just 3 square kilometers. They were left in conditions that led many to die of disease and starvation. Day after day, their loved ones were sent off to concentration camps. A lot of them were sent on trains that traveled to Treblinka, on the tracks you see on the monument behind me, headed to near certain death. But there were those who refused to be intimidated, who refused to simply accept these brutalities, those for whom the fire of hope would not be extinguished. 80 years ago tomorrow, hundreds of Jews in Warsaw rose up and fought for their freedom for 27 days. They overcame hunger, exhaustion, depletion in an extraordinary act of courage. And so many of those who chose hope, who led those uprisings, as Andrea said, were young people. Today, you, like all of us, are here to listen and to learn. But I also want to challenge you young people to go a step further, to think about how you can engage, what you can do in your lives every single day to stand up for what's right. We often tell young people that you're our leaders of tomorrow. And leaders of tomorrow is a lovely thing to lay on you, except it's also sort of conditional. If you do your homework and get good grades and get a good career and move forward properly in life, well then one day perhaps you can be a leader. I don't want you to think of yourselves as leaders of tomorrow. You need to know you can and must be and are leaders today already. That's how you stand up in your everyday. See, the Holocaust can often feel like an event of the past, but the hatred and the anti-Semitism that led to it are sadly very present. You see it online. You see it and hear it too often from dangerous corners of society that are being amplified by people who should know better. And it's right across the spectrum in society. We hear it from the fringes on the right, but we hear it from the fringes on the left and from too many places close to the center as well. We need to continue to call out hatred in all its forms and understand that anti-Semitism has always been the one that is so often a precursor to so many other hatreds. L'année dernière, notre gouvernement a annoncé que le poste d'envoyé spécial pour la préservation de la mémoire de l'Holocauste et la lutte contre l'antisémitisme serait dorénavant un poste permanent au Canada. Et dans notre Et dans notre dernier budget, on a annoncé de nouveaux fonds pour le programme de financement des projets d'infrastructures de sécurité qui aident à protéger les institutions de la communauté juive, comme les synagogues, les écoles de jour et les centres communautaires. On a également fait des investissements dans l'enseignement de l'Holocauste en accordant des fonds à des musées partout au Canada, notamment le Toronto Holocaust Museum et le nouveau musée de l'Holocauste à Montréal. Parce que le meilleur moyen de lutter contre l'antisémitisme est de fournir des outils qui permettent aux gens d'être pleinement informés. Toutes les personnes ici présentes, en particulier vous les jeunes qui vont continuer de transmettre ces histoires aux générations suivantes, vous avez un rôle important à jouer dans la lutte contre l'antisémitisme. Écoutez les voix de ceux qu'on a encore la chance de compter parmi nous aujourd'hui, amplifiez-les. Veillez à ce que la vérité sur ce qui s'est passé pendant l'Holocauste résonne pour toujours. We all need to identify and call out anti-Semitism when we see it. We need to be standing guard against the kinds of prejudice that can creep in and lead to systemic hate, and standing guard for the values of democracy, freedom, justice, and peace. As Polish-born Holocaust survivor Halina Berenbaum recently said, you must remain hopeful and fight to live, to be free. Thank you. Merci d'être ici.
Merci beaucoup pour vos commentaires, Premier Ministre Trudeau. Our next speaker is Jonathan Allen, the Executive Director of the Canadian Society for Yad Vashem, a key partner in our commemoration today. Jonathan, please.
Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Holocaust survivors and your families, students, distinguished guests, friends. As Annette said, my name is Jonathan Allen, and I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Society for Yad Vashem. I am honored to be here with you today for the Yom HaShoah ceremony at the National Holocaust Monument in Ottawa. Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Murders and Heroes Remembrance Day, is a time for commemoration, a time to pause and remember the tragedy of the Holocaust, its victims, and its survivors. We remember 6 million innocent Jewish people murdered in the Holocaust, including over 1.5 million children. The Holocaust was conducted on an industrialized level, using machinery, mechanisms, and equipment in an attempt to destroy an entire culture and religion with maximum efficiency. It is our responsibility to ensure that these horrific events never occur again, and that we remember all of those murdered by the Nazi regime. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, a moment during the Holocaust when a group of individuals resisted and fought against the Nazis in a significant battle. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was one of many acts of armed and, as Andrea mentioned, unarmed Jewish resistance in response to the persecution, oppression, and humiliation the Jews were suffering at the hands of Nazi Germany and its allies. In addition to physically combating their oppressors, Jewish resistance took many other forms: spiritual, cultural, political, educational, and religious. Ultimately, the widespread resistance did not have the capability of saving massive numbers of lives. In view of the determination of the Nazis to implement the final solution and the force they and their accomplices wielded, resistance and fighting was a struggle of the tormented, abandoned to their fate. And yet, the scope and versatility of Jewish resistance during the Holocaust in all of its forms has bequeathed a Jewish legacy for generations, symbolizing the power of the human spirit and humanity's fundamental values. On behalf of the board, staff, and stakeholders of the Canadian Society for Yad Vashem, I thank everyone here, both in person and those watching online, for taking the time today to remember and reflect. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, and indeed to your staff for your contribution and support. Rabbi Sher is the Rabbi of Congregation Mexicae Hadass in Ottawa and a very important member of the National Holocaust Monument Committee. His steadfast approach and calm thinking keeps us all on even keel. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce Rabbi Idan Sher.
Good morning. I begin with the words of the Honorable Erwin Kotler, the Special Envoy on Preserving Holocaust Remembrance and Combating Anti-Semitism. He could not be here today, so he sent some remarks to be shared. Today we reflect on the universal lessons of the Holocaust, including the dangers of indifference and inaction in the face of mass atrocity and genocide, the dangers of Holocaust denial and distortion, of the assault on truth and memory, and the whitewashing of the worst crimes in history, of the mass murder of 6 million Jews, 1.5 million of whom were children, and of millions of non-Jews, not as abstract statistics, but as we see at these moments of remembrance, unto each person there is a name, each person is an identity, each person is a universe. And so, the abiding and enduring lesson, we are each, wherever we are, the guarantors of each other's destiny. He also asked that we conclude his words, speaking to the survivors that are with us here today, survivors across Canada. May I close with a word to Holocaust survivors. For you have endured the worst of inhumanity, but you have somehow found in the resources of your own humanity the will to go on, to build your families, and to make an enduring contribution to Canada and the communities in which you live. Indeed, to the Holocaust survivors, you inspire us, and we commit to continuing your legacy as long as we live. Thank you, Special Envoy Kotler, for those very powerful words. Now, I think to understand what a ghetto looked like, the Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto, they were sealed off from the rest of the city by a gigantic brick wall. It was ringed with barbed wire. It was patrolled day and night. I'll never forget seeing fragments of that wall when I visited Poland several years ago. The suffering in the ghetto was unfathomable. At its height, more than 450,000 people were crammed into the smallest area, 20 people living in a single room. Around 100,000 people died of starvation, sickness, and maltreatment. Anyone caught trying to leave was shot, and thousands were for no other reason than being Jewish. But in all of this, the flame of the human spirit persevered. Love was found. Weddings and other life cycle events were celebrated. The Jewish Sabbath, Shabbat, and other Jewish holidays were observed and cherished. Thousands of people would gather to pray. And in this hell on earth, in secret schools, youth continued to learn. Youth groups formed, and the spirit of the Jewish people refused to die. Their commitment to living to the fullest was nothing short of heroic. Then July 1942, the Nazis announced that all Jews living in Warsaw, regardless of age and gender, they were to be murdered. Within 10 weeks, 310,000 people were murdered at the Treblinka death camp. As the Prime Minister pointed out, the road to it is depicted on the stone wall behind me. The remaining over 60,000 Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto, they never stopped living. Like 17-year-old Fagala Peltel, she lost her entire family. This 17-year-old was smuggled in and out of the ghetto. Disguised as a Polish woman, she risked her life to smuggle weapons into the ghetto, phony bottles, dynamite wrapped in grease paper to make it look like butter. And she also smuggled in information. She was one of those brave souls that shared with the remaining Jews of the ghetto that those cattle cars that their loved ones were trafficked onto, they went to their certain death at Treblinka, which was the fate of her mother and her little brothers. As this devastating information was absorbed, dividing lines were shed as Jews on the left and on the right, liberal and conservative, observant and not, they united together, led by a 23-year-old Mordechai Analevich and his young comrades. With the call of "Let liberty live," they fought. On April 18th, 1943, it became clear that the Nazis would the next day liquidate the remaining Jews of the ghetto. It was a grotesque birthday gift for Hitler, a Warsaw with not one Jew left by April 20th, Hitler's birthday. It was Passover Eve, the night of the first Passover Seder. On Passover, Jews celebrate freedom. With that spiritual sustenance, through hundreds or even thousands of Seders in the Warsaw Ghetto that night, with that spiritual sustenance and sense of historic responsibility, on that daybreak, as the Nazis entered the ghetto, with the words, "Let liberty live," the uprising began. Led by people not much older than many of the students here today. As the Washington Post put it, the Germans had to spend more time subduing the 700 Jewish fighters in the Warsaw Ghetto than they did conquering massive countries. It was two teenagers who courageously went up to the tallest building in the ghetto, and in an act of powerful defiance, they raised a flag of white and blue with the Star of David in the middle, proclaiming, "Am Yisrael Chai," the nation of Israel shall live. It was Mary Berg, a 15 years old at that time, who wrote the words, "I shall do everything I can to save those who can still be saved, and to avenge those who are so bitterly humiliated in their last moments. And those who were ground into ash, I shall always see them alive." The words of a 15-year-old. On May 16th, the Nazis blew up the Great Synagogue of Warsaw, once the largest Jewish house of worship in the world. To quash the uprising, the ghetto was destroyed, but the legacy lived on. The legacy lived on as Jewish youth led resistance throughout other ghettos and concentration camps, as they were willing to die for freedom, for dignity, for the human spirit, for themselves and for others. That is their enduring legacy. So I turn to you specifically, to all of the students present here today, the leaders of today, and I request, let us live for what they died for. Let us live for freedom. Let us live for dignity. Let us live for love. Let us live for the indomitable nature of the human spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Sher. Je vous invite maintenant à regarder une vidéo sur le soulèvement de la Varsovie Ghetto. I invite you now to watch a video on the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. Our thanks to Yad Vashem Israel for this educational video.
It is impossible to put into words what we have been through. What happened exceeded our boldest dreams. The Germans ran twice from the ghetto. The dream of my life has risen to become fact. I have been a witness to the magnificent, heroic fighting of Jewish men in battle. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which has become a symbol of Jewish resistance during the Holocaust, broke out on April 19, 1943. It was the first popular urban uprising in Nazi-controlled Europe. On July 22, 1942, the Great Deportation from the ghetto began. By September 21st, the Germans had deported more than 300,000 Jews from the ghetto to the Treblinka extermination camp, where they were murdered. Attempts to organize a fighting underground in the ghetto had begun even before the Great Deportation, but did not come to fruition. Once the deportations began, these efforts resumed, leading to the founding of the Jewish Fighting Organization, ZOB, which encompassed most of the political factions and Jewish youth movements in the ghetto. Mordechai Analevich, 23 years old, a member of Hashomer HaTzair, was made its commander. The Beitar revisionist Zionist youth movement set up its own fighting force, the Jewish Military Union, led by Pavel Frankel and Leib Rodal, which was joined by Jews from other political factions. On January 18, 1943, another forced deportation began. The Jewish underground leadership, believing it to be the onset of the final deportation, initiated resistance in what would later become known as the Small Uprising. Following the deportation, which had been planned to be of limited scope, some in the ghetto believed that the uprising had stopped it short. In light of the certainty of future deportations, and alongside the increased underground activity, many Jews began preparations for hiding in bunkers built in house cellars to be used in defiance of German deportation orders. On April 19, 1943, the eve of Passover, the final deportation began, and the underground organizations again resisted. The Germans were caught off guard by the Jewish resistance and the defiance of the deportation orders. During the first 3 days, street fighting took place in the ghetto. The Jewish Fighting Organization scattered its positions throughout the ghetto. The Jewish Military Union did most of its fighting at Moronovska Square, which for several days was a major center of the fighting. The Germans began systematically torching houses, making the ghetto a fire trap for its inmates. Despite the intense heat and lack of air, food, and water, the bunker residents continued barricading inside. Fighting took place from bunker to bunker, as large German forces burned and detonated the entire ghetto area. On May 8th, the Jewish Fighting Organization command bunker, located on 18 Miwa Street, fell with many fighters inside, including Mordechai Analevich. The ghetto fighters fought bravely for over a month. Many of them were killed during the suppression of the uprising. Of those that were captured, thousands were tortured and shot in the ghetto. Some of the Jews were sent to various camps in the Lublin area. A few managed to escape the ghetto in various ways, continuing underground fighting against the Nazis or surviving on the Aryan side.
That was quite informative. Our next presentation will be animated by Rachel Berriot, gestionnaire patrimoine canadien, and Nicole Advocat of the National Holocaust Monument Committee. We're going to show you a slide production, and we thought it would be easier if it was also spoken in both official languages. Rachel, Nicole, thank you.
Érection du mur du ghetto de Varsovie.
Erection of the Warsaw Ghetto Wall.
Police juive à une entrée barricadée du ghetto de Varsovie.
Jewish police at a barricaded entrance to the Warsaw Ghetto.
Des civils polonais passent devant une section du mur qui séparait le ghetto de Varsovie du reste de la ville.
Polish civilians walk by a section of the wall that separated the Warsaw Ghetto from the rest of the city.
Une femme émaciée vend des brassards obligatoires de l'étoile de David pour les Juifs. Cette photographie a été prise par Heinrich Jost, un sergent de l'armée allemande, pendant la Seconde Guerre mondiale. Le 19 septembre 1941, il prit 140 images de tous les aspects de la vie et de la mort dans le ghetto de Varsovie.
An emaciated woman sells the compulsory Star of David armbands for Jews. Warsaw Ghetto, Poland. The photograph was taken by Heinrich Jost, a German army sergeant during World War II. On September 19, 1941, he took 140 images of every aspect of life and death in the Warsaw Ghetto.
Étal d'un marchand ambulant vendant de vieux livres en hébreu.
Stall of a street vendor selling old Hebrew books.
Un habitant du ghetto de Varsovie donne de l'argent à 2 enfants dans une rue du ghetto.
A Warsaw Ghetto resident gives money to 2 children on a Warsaw Ghetto street.
Une famille marchant à la tête d'une file de Juifs en route pour être déportés lors du soulèvement du ghetto en 1943.
A family marching at the head of a column of Jews on their way to be deported during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in 1943.
À Varsovie, en Pologne, en 1943, les hommes du général Stroop à côté de bâtiments en feu pendant la répression du soulèvement.
General Stroop's men next to a burning building during the suppression of the uprising.
Les Juifs capturés lors du soulèvement du ghetto en 1943 sont alignés contre un mur pour être fouillés à la recherche d'armes.
Jews captured during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising are lined up against a wall to be searched for weapons.
Entouré de gardes lourdement armés, le général de division SS Jürgen Stroop au centre regarde des immeubles d'habitation brûlés pendant le soulèvement du ghetto.
Surrounded by heavily armed guards, SS Major General Jürgen Stroop watches housing blocks burn during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising.
The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising et The Last March, sculpteur Nathan Rapoport, installé en janvier 1976 à Yad Vashem à Jérusalem.
The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and the Last March, sculptor Nathan Rapoport, installed during 1976 at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem.
Soldats allemands pointant leurs armes sur des femmes et des enfants lors de la répression du soulèvement du ghetto de Varsovie.
German soldiers pointing their weapons at women and children during the suppression of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising.
Merci beaucoup, Rachel and Nicole. A special thank you to Ellie Lipschitz and Belle Riley of the Embassy of Israel. They're behind this wall doing all the animation. Thank you so much for your coordination. I would like to now invite Ambassador Jelski from the Republic of Poland to the podium. Ambassador Jelski, please.
The Right Honorable Justin Trudeau, Honorable Holocaust survivors, Excellencies, Ambassadors, Members of Parliament, Senators, leaders of and members of the Polish community, of the Jewish community here in Ottawa, ladies and gentlemen. Tomorrow in Warsaw, the Presidents of Poland, Andrzej Duda, of Israel, Isaac Herzog, and of Germany, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, accompanied by survivors and their families, will attend a ceremony at the monument to the ghetto heroes. They will commemorate the heroic fight that shook the city 80 years ago, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. German invasion of Poland began in September 1939. Already in October, Germans began setting up ghettos for the large Polish Jewish community. There were over 600 of them in the occupied Poland. the largest in the capital city of Warsaw. More than 400,000 people were imprisoned in the Warsaw Ghetto. By the summer 1942, many of them died of starvation, disease, forced labor, and were executed. Hundreds of thousands were deported to death camps, leaving around 60,000 Jews encircled by a brick wall in the center of the city. On April 19th, 1943, on the eve of Passover, German troops entered the ghetto in order to carry out its final liquidation. They were met with fierce resistance from several hundred insurgents who engaged in combat amongst the rubble of the ghetto that was being continuously and systematically destroyed. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was not the only, but the largest heroic act of armed ghetto-based resistance taken up by Jews during World War II. On the afternoon of April 19th, the combatants symbolically placed the white and red flag of Poland and the blue and white flag of the Jewish resistance on the roof of the organization's stronghold. It was a symbol of the inseparable fate of Poles and Jews. Today I'm wearing a yellow paper daffodil pin. Hundreds of thousands of such and similar daffodils are printed in Poland in advance to April 19th commemorations every year. This is an initiative by the remarkable Pauline Museum. The daffodils are associated with Marek Edelman, the last surviving leader of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Looking back, we know that the valor of the Jewish fighters added to the strength and dedication of the Warsaw Uprising that followed in August 1944. It was a single largest military effort undertaken by the Polish resistance during the World War II. Uprisings in Poland against oppression of superior powers in 18th, 19th, and 20th century is a Polish historic trademark. Poles detest war atrocities, authoritarian regimes, and systemic hate against nations. This is why we stand so firm in supporting millions of Ukrainian refugees, as well as Ukraine in the fight against the Russian tyranny today. Poles have a strong sense of being custodians of history that cannot be forgotten. This includes the history of the Holocaust. In this spirit, I carry with honor the yellow daffodil, the symbol of remembrance of the tragic fate of the Jewish fighters of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Glory to the heroes.
Thank you, Ambassador Jelski, for your presentation. Thank you. Notre prochain participant, je dire interprète, est venu de Montréal avec sa famille et ses amis. Raphaël Étienne Krief est l'arrière-petite-fille de Rabbi David Feuerwerker et sa femme Antoinette. These individuals fought in the French resistance. Raphael is going to play the partisan as interpreted by Leonard Cohen.
Hello, my name is Rafaela. This is a piece originally written in 1943 by a French resistance leader, Emmanuel Dastier de la Vigerie. It was later on adapted by our very own Leonard Cohen. I am here today to honor the memory of my great-grandparents, Rabbi David Feuerwerker and Antoinette Feuerwerker. Canada welcomed them in 1966. They were both Holocaust survivors and members of the French resistance. This is The Partisan. was hidden in the garret when the soldiers came. She died without a whisper. There were 3 of us this morning. I'm the only one this evening, but I must go on. The fun cheers on my prison. Oh, the wind is blowing. Through the graves, the wind is blowing. Freedom soon will come. Then will come from the shadows. Les Allemands étaient chez moi. Ils me disent résigne-toi, mais je n'ai pas peur. J'ai repris mon âme. J'ai changé 100 fois de nom. J'ai perdu femme et enfants, mais j'ai tant d'amis. J'ai la France entière. Un vieil homme dans un grenier pour la nuit nous a cachés. Les Allemands l'ont pris. Il est mort sans surprise. Oh, the wind is blowing through the graves. The wind is blowing. Freedom soon will come. Then will come from the shadows. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Raphaël. Merci. J'aimerais inviter ministre du patrimoine canadien, l'honorable Pablo Rodriguez, au podium.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, ambassadors, membres du corps diplomatique, chers collègues élus, ministres, députés, sénateurs, chers amis, dear friends, aujourd'hui, nous faisons devoir de mémoire. On se souvient des millions de victimes qui ont péri pendant l'Holocauste. We remember the suffering endured by those who lived through unspeakable atrocities. Aujourd'hui, on rend également hommage à ceux qui ont survécu. Certains sont avec nous aujourd'hui. On a le privilège, l'honneur d'être avec vous aujourd'hui. Et leur capacité à reconstruire leur vie, leur communauté, témoigne de leur courage, de leur résilience à la fois individuellement, mais aussi collectivement. A year and a half ago, a dear friend of mine, the Honorable Jacques Sada, invited me to visit the Montreal Holocaust Museum. And following that very moving visit, I had the opportunity to sit down with Jacques and the museum colleagues to discuss the importance of education, the importance of education as a tool to combat antisemitism, hate, and racism. Et je dirais que l'éducation a jamais été aussi importante. En fait, En fait, je dirais qu'elle est plus nécessaire que jamais. C'est pourquoi il faut reconnaître, valoriser, appuyer le travail absolument crucial, comme celui accompli au Musée de l'Holocauste de Montréal par CIJA, par d'autres organisations, initiatives communautaires. On doit le faire pour éduquer les générations futures sur l'importance de la mémoire de l'Holocauste, pour lutter contre l'intolérance, l'exclusion, le racisme, la haine, pour promouvoir la dignité humaine. Et pour tout ça, et pour tant d'autres raisons, on doit le faire. Antisemitism, racism, hate have no place in Canada. Indifference has no place in Canada. And that's why I'm so encouraged to see so many young people joining us here today, not only to commemorate, but also to remember. To remember why it's so important to fight against hate, against racism in all its forms, so that current and future generations may live in a more accepting world. Et en ce jour de commémoration, souvenons-nous ensemble des victimes, honorons le survivant et réaffirmons notre engagement, l'engagement d'éduquer l'ensemble de nos concitoyens, surtout les plus jeunes, quant aux horreurs causées par la haine, le racisme, et surtout démontrer l'importance de l'ouverture aux autres et du respect de la dignité humaine. Merci.
Thank you so much for your kind words. It is now my pleasure to invite the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Melissa Lantsman, to offer remarks.
Prime Minister, ministers, colleagues, the diplomatic corps, most importantly, the survivors who tell their stories and the young people who are going to continue to tell those stories. I'm here today on behalf of Pierre Poilievre, Leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition, and as the proud member of Parliament from Thornhill. And today we remember the lives of the more than 6 million Jews, the mothers, the fathers, the sons, the daughters, the brothers, the sisters who were systematically murdered by the unimaginable stone-cold hatred of the Nazi regime. And even 80 years later, we still don't have the words to accurately describe the evil that took place in the halls of power, in the streets, and in the extermination camps that today serve as vivid reminders of history's darkest moments. When I began to understand the pernicious hatred that fueled the Holocaust, it prompted real questions about my own faith. I distinctly remember asking the question of a family whose commitment to God transcended the events of our very own family's not so distant past. I asked, why did God let it happen? Why do bad things happen to good people? And how did so many turn a blind eye? Admittedly, for a logical person, committed still to faith and learning and divine design, I've still never received a satisfactory answer. Likely because only God knows. But I do know this: without the resolution, the conviction, the tenacity of a large number of resistors, many of us wouldn't be here today, including this member of Parliament. So I take the answer as one that requires me to bear witness for the living and for the dead, to continue to hear the stories and impart the lessons of the Holocaust, and to stand up to the forces of hatred that led to the darkness and condemn and challenge those forces at every opportunity, to celebrate the courage of the righteous among nations, ordinary people doing extraordinary things against their own interests, and to celebrate those who stood up to terror in Europe, who brought an end to the oppressive Nazi rule, and who saved thousands of innocent lives. On Yom HaShoah, we specifically mark one occasion of such fortitude, An extremely visible act of resistance, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising remains a symbol of undying faith and determination of the Jewish people during the Holocaust, ones who may have never questioned why God let it happen. And we owe it to the heroes and the victims and the survivors, the Jewish and the non-Jewish, to make sure that their sacrifices were not in vain, and to use the blessings that they have helped bestow on us to carry on a proud nation, and most importantly, to never forget. It is not enough to remain silent in the face of evil, for inaction and indifference are in themselves complicity, and it is not enough to let darkness envelop the world when we have the power to light a candle. Today we remember, but we also recommit, and we recommit to standing up to the fundamental rights and freedoms of religion and conscience and expression, and recommit to speaking up whenever human rights are threatened. Recommit to our sacred obligation to ensure that the stories of the Holocaust live on for generations to come. And that's up to you. And recommit to understanding that the forces that have brought about the evil of the Shoah are alive and well in our schools, in our unions, in our communities, online, and even in the hallways of power here. And only with that, only when we root them out, will we truly ensure that the horrors of the Holocaust never again take place. So I thank you to all of those who commit themselves to remembering, and to all of those who will commit themselves to telling the story.
Thank you, Honourable Lantsman. It's now my pleasure to invite Ambassador Hoffman to offer his remarks. Ambassador Hoffman.
Right Honourable Prime Minister Trudeau, Honourable Holocaust survivors, ministers, members of Parliament, ambassadors, dignitaries, and of course, the representatives of our future dear students. It is my honor to be addressing you on Yom HaShoah, a day established by the State of Israel and recognized in Canada and around the world as one to mourn and remember the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust. Also to honor the survivors who chose to build a positive future out of the death and despair that they witnessed and experienced, many of whom were the driving force in the creation of Canada's Jewish community, as well as the founding and creation of the miracle that is the State of Israel. The Holocaust represents one of the most horrific periods in recent human history, a genocide so systematic and barbaric that 2 out of 3 European Jews were killed. Our people have still not recovered to pre-Holocaust numbers. It is hard to wrap one's mind around these numbers when every single one represents a brother, sister, father, mother, friend, teacher, or religious leader who were executed just because they were Jewish. We must continue to honor their memory. To the students present, thank you for being here today. We are grateful that you are with us. I'm well aware that we have leaders from every generation right here who are committed to Holocaust remembrance and to the countering of anti-Semitism and hatred in all its forms. This has to be our everyday commitment, not just on Remembrance Day once a year. Year after year, upsetting incidents, language, and violence targeted towards the Jewish community show us that Holocaust remembrance can never be passive. This includes calling out modern-day comparisons, distortion, and denial that seek to diminish the magnitude of the true history of what really happened. That ultimately uphold anti-Semitism. Tomorrow will be 80 years since the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising on April 19, 1943. This was the largest uprising by Jews during World War II. Hundreds of Jewish fighters participated. This story is a powerful reminder of the Jewish people's resistance in the face of persecution and our unflinching dedication to stand up for ourselves like we do to this day. I am proud to be here as a representative of Israel, a country founded on the premise of a Jewish state. The state of Israel stands as the greatest symbol to the idea of never again. It will always be a safe haven for Jewish people, no matter where they are from. And the state of Israel is particularly grateful for Canadians' leaders across the political spectrum who speak up against the world's oldest hatred. The Jewish state will continue to exist not only as a preservation of our history and homeland for our people, but in defense of our very being. Those who still deny the right of the Jewish state to exist continue the narrative of those who wish to exterminate the Jewish people, only now in a modern context. Therefore, it must be clear to all of us that combating anti-Semitism and Holocaust remembrance is not just sharing prayers and thoughts with or commemoration of Jews that were persecuted and murdered. It is ensuring that living Jews, no matter where they live, be it Ottawa, Jerusalem, Toronto, Efrat, Tel Aviv, or any place else, have the right and the freedom to live safely and securely as Jews. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Hoffman. We're going to miss you and your staff, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. I would like the following students to come to the front, please. These students have a very special task in reading out some of the names of young people who perished in the Warsaw Ghetto. We're going to do our best. We haven't rehearsed this. So could we have Eliezer Teitelbaum, Claudia Tiquitius, Omak Sadek, Sukamina Sharna, Kate Bahat, Shlomo Sher, Elishiva Goldstein. Do we have any others that I have omitted? Could this be Benjamin? No? Well, please come ahead. That's all right. Hello. Come, Elishiva, Shlomo, come here. So we're just going to read out some names. Please come this side. They've been practicing the names in Polish, so they're going to do their best. Okay.
Benjamin Lechtos, age 21.
Thank you.
I'm too short. Okay. Yikiel Leichter.
Nana Charna, age 19, and Marisha Winter, age 19.
Lolek Rice, 15, Brona Frosch, 19, and David Goldman, 19.
Richard Lifshitz, 20 years old.
Gustav Beshmet, 18 years of age. Marinka Segalovich, 21 years of age.
Ita Korn, 13 years old. Chaim Bonlik, 20 years old.
Labeled Bandalik, 18 years old. Gustav Betsim, 18 years old.
Marisa Winter, 19.
Yurik Kashub.
Stefan Totenberg, 16 years old. Romek Zonsdane, 12 years old.
Mick Cohen, 21 years old. Nana Sarna, 19 years old.
Thank you so much. You can return to your seats. Well done. They are certainly our future leaders. From the very young there to the older ones. What an example. It is now my pleasure to introduce Shimon Kofler-Fogel, CEO of the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, for his closing remarks. Thank you.
The hour's late, people are getting cold. Mais Annette, permettez-moi un petit moment directement de parler, raconter une histoire aux étudiants. I think you're all older, but you'll remember back when you were in grade 1 and first day of school is, you're a little nervous, people are a little jittery. So the teacher probably did something like she did for me when I entered grade 1. And she went around the classroom and asked everybody to just share a word about their grandparents. And the first child proudly said that she had 4 and told a little story about her grandparents. The next one talked about the 3 surviving grandparents. The next one talked about 6. You can figure out the math. And so on and so forth. Until the teacher came to me, and I burst out crying because I had none. You would think that they were tears of sadness at having lost all of my grandparents in the Holocaust, but they were tears of humiliation, me feeling completely inadequate because I was the only one in all of the classroom who wasn't able to share a story about a grandparent. Listen carefully to the words of our elder. When he charged you all to embrace your history, to understand that what happened in the past defines who you are today, what you stand for, and what you can be. Thank you for joining us this morning. Zechor al tishkach. Remember and do not forget. These words represent the formula for true commemoration of Yom HaShoah. Souvenons-nous de la calamité singulière qu'a été le Holocauste. Les millions de vies privées de la possibilité d'accomplir pleinement leur destin. Et les millions d'hommes qui ont été privés de cette vie à laquelle ils avaient droit. But remembering, that's only half of the formula. The other half is not to forget. To internalize that experience and draw lessons that serve to shape and guide society today. Our government has taken those twin imperatives to heart, and we're grateful for its leadership. In criminalizing Holocaust denial, the government is translating the sacred act of zechor, of remembrance, into action. And in embarking on a comprehensive anti-racism strategy, in adopting the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, in toiling Minister Rodriguez to introduce effective legislation to address online harms and hate. It has affirmed the obligation of al tishkach, to not forget the lessons of unchecked and unchallenged hate. In our times, the challenge can perhaps be reduced to one word: inclusion. For the crime of the Holocaust and all manners of hate, discrimination, bigotry, and racism is founded on the idea of exclusion. De marquer et de cibler l'autre. Et l'antidote à cela, c'est l'inclusion. On insisting that diversity is paradoxically the very attribute that binds us together. And no one, not in Ottawa, Paris, Beijing, or indeed Jerusalem, is exempt from joining that struggle for an inclusive society. As Thornhill MP and Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Melissa Lantsman, challenged everyone yesterday at the release of the vitally important B'nai B'rith annual audit on anti-Semitism. Stand up to hatred, she said, even if it's not hatred directed at you. Only thus can we honor our pledge to the victims of the Shoah, reaffirmed every year on this day. Zechor al tishkach. Remember and do not forget.
Thank you, Sherman, and for the support of CEDRA in today's event. As we come to the end of our event this morning, I would like to invite our Holocaust survivors, for those who can, Kathy, Ellie, Vera, we'll have Flora Love in place of Ruth, and if possible, Cantor Kraus, if possible, and also Noah Hamburg from March of the Living to assist in lighting the candles in remembrance. If you could please come forward. Thank you. Thank you so much. And as we close, I'd like to invite Adam Moscow to lead us in O Canada and Hatikva, which means hope. Thank you.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Car ton bras s'est porté le pays, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée de brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Kolod baleva penima, nefesh Yehudi homia, ulfatem Mizrach kadima, hayin letzion Sophia. Od lovda tikvateno, hatikva bachnot albaim, liotam chofshi be'artzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Liotam chofshi be'artzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim.
This concludes our ceremony. Merci beaucoup. Bon retour. Conduire prudemment. Merci.